This video is brought to you by MoviePalette.com and enter ROOM15 for 15% off of your palette. Hey horror fans, welcome back to 1237, back with another review. As I continue my sort of marathon or run through of films based on real life serial killers, and this is one that I did not think I was going to be able to get unless I got it off eBay, which is what I did. Because this one had a print some time ago. It was put out by Severin as the release I have. But it's also on a killer that there's been a ton of works on. I've already reviewed, I think, 3 films or 2 films and a series. But like The Deliberate Stranger and Ted Bundy, which was my last review, this was the first one ever made of this killer. And it was the only one to be put out during that killer's lifetime, like The Deliberate Stranger and Ted Bundy. It is 1993's The Secret Life, Jeffrey Dahmer. Which, yes, this is the DVD put out by Severin's Intervision label, which I think is mostly just really low-budget, super independent films made to look like a VHS box and really maintaining its low-quality look and feel. Now, yeah, it came out in 1993, I believe just less than a year. I don't remember the exact release date, but Dahmer was killed November 28th of 94. This came out, it doesn't even say, so less than a full year than his death, making this the only one that doesn't end with it showing or telling us through text that he would eventually be murdered in prison. Now, this is one that I had not seen. I had seen numerous films on Dahmer. I mean, like I said, I've reviewed the 2002 film with Jeremy Renner. I reviewed My Friend Dahmer. I have not reviewed, because it's more of a documentary. Well, I've reviewed the Netflix series, which will not get a DVD release because Netflix is stingy. That's something I would love to get. This is considered a film, the Jeffrey Dahmer Files, because there is dramatization built around it, but it's more of a documentary. I also have this NBC DVD that has the Stone Phillips interview, also with David Berkowitz. There is one of these of the BTK Confessions, which I would love to get, but it's kind of pricey. And then, of course, the numerous documentaries that I own and that I've seen. And then I have shown these before, but works I have on Dahmer. The Jeffrey Dahmer Story by Don Davis. Inside the Mind of Jeffrey Dahmer, which I do like this Inside the Mind of series. I have the one of BTK. I would like to get the one of Gacy. Monster, which, for how short it is, I believe this was the basis for the Netflix show. And I do have Lionel Dahmer's A Father Story. I also have the graphic novel of My Friend Dahmer, and at least 24 more encyclopedic type books. And I pulled this because he's on the cover of multiple ones. But this book is like, I treat this like my Bible. This is my favorite one, and probably the most comprehensive one. So I have quite a bit on Dahmer. I've always found him super fascinating. I'm not going to do like the Cliff Notes run-through of his crimes, because I think I did that for Jeremy Renner and the Netflix series. But real quick, he killed 17 young men and boys between 1978, when he was 18, just after high school, and July of 1991, July 22nd. Which I've seen conflicting things. I think Tracy Edwards arrived at his apartment in the late hours of the 21st, and then he was arrested on the 22nd of 91. So, about 13 years, 17 victims. He had a 9-year hiatus during that time, so really he killed 17 in the course of like 4 years. So, and yes, he was known to save body parts, practice necrophilia, cannibalism. There's a whole world of stuff that you can find. if you want to hear me talk more about it, you can check my review for the Netflix series and I believe the Jeremy Renner film. So now going into this, which it was directed by David Bowen, David R. Bowen, who I don't know anything else that he's directed. Stars Carl Crew as Dahmer, who also wrote the film and served as a producer. Also stars Donna Stewart Bowen. I'm guessing she's related to David Bowen, probably his mother. Gene Bascom. Ronald Vider did the cinematography, and David R. Bowen did the music. Originally put out by Moonlit Films, and it's only 99 minutes. Now, the only thing I had seen of this was years ago, like 10 plus, like probably 12, 13 years ago. I saw a clip on YouTube, the scene where he kills Stephen Hicks. And that was all that I've seen. Now, I've heard that this was a highly fictitious, even the original poster says a fictionalized account. And even when it first opens, we get the opening crawl about who Jeffrey Dahmer was and how this is a fictionalized account just to kind of give us an idea of what his crimes were like. So it's very upfront, even saying that events and names have been changed to protect the families, but the one name it does keep is Tracy Edwards, the final to-be victim that got away, brought the police back. All other names have been changed or completely excluded. I was actually surprised by how accurate it was. I was expecting more of a Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, just hugely fictionalized or almost completely fabricated film. But since there is so much known about Dahmer, that it's still fairly close to the real life thing. The biggest thing they change is the personality of Dahmer himself. Now, obviously we know from real life he has said that he did not enjoy killing. The killing was, in his words, a means to an end. He wanted to have full control and dominance, and the compulsion to dismember, dissect, practice necrophilia, the cannibalism. Well, the cannibalism came eventually, but everything after the death itself is what he was after. This portrays him just like a maniacal killer. Like he's more addicted to the killing than anything else. So that's a huge difference. I mean, there's even a part where the character that's based on Tony Hughes, his victim that wanted to be a model and was deaf, he's shown as getting a sawzall to his neck, while blood spurts in his face, and he's just laughing. In real life, he was strangled. It does show him not so much prank call. He didn't really prank call his victims' families, in which case it was the family of Eddie Smith. He just called and said, "Don't bother looking for him. He's dead." Here, he makes it more like a sickening prank call. So this depicts him as being more addicted to the kill itself. Also, just Carl Crew just kind of reminds me of a young Olaf Ittenbach from like The Burning Moon or something. And this is different than the Jeremy Renner film and the Netflix series in that it doesn't necessarily take place during a certain time and then we get flashbacks that tell the story. Even though it opens up with him in the backseat of the cop car, then ends with that same shot, it's pretty much all like a linear story, which it then cuts to 82 when he moved in with grandma, and then back to 78 when he graduated. So it jumps around a little in the very beginning, but for the most part, it is a linear chronological story. So it is different than those two. But, it still has its differences, like any other one that I've done. this, as far as events that happened, is pretty much true. Uh, whether it's the names or how they were killed or where it was, that might be different. But it's not too far off from the real story, which is what I was expecting. So maybe that's why I'm more impressed by it. It is super low budget. It does try to do some things kind of artistically. Mainly if it's trying to juxtapose something. Like when Dahmer is dismembering Stephen Hicks, his first victim, it keeps cutting back to young Dahmer playing with Tonka trucks with like this negative filter, then Lionel coming to pick him up. Which I also like the juxtaposition of him killing Stephen Hicks. It was either killing or dismembering him, but it keeps cutting to his mother inside with the sewing machine, cutting back and forth, which that is an inconsistency. It shows, and it's even an inconsistency within the film. It says the summer he graduated, he picked up this hitchhiker, which was a fantasy he's had for a long time. It was Stephen Hicks, brings him back to his house, which in the film it shows that his mother was home sewing, and they had their weights outside, and they were lifting weights. He went to go leave. He picked up a weight plate, struck him in the head, dragged him under the house, dismembered him. But then when his arms were gone, he springs back to life, and he has to hit him again. In real life, he came home from school, and his mother was gone. And he was alone for weeks at that point. And I think he killed Hicks in the kitchen. It was at least inside with a dumbbell. So they modified it a little bit. But it first opens up when it says 82, him moving into grandma's. After he got discharged from the military, he moved to Florida. Then it with grandma, it mentions that. So I was like, okay, it mentions that. So maybe it's going to be more faithful than I thought. Then it jumps to September 15th of 87, which was the... It depicts the second victim, Stephen Tuomi, which it doesn't say the name, where he invited him to a hotel room. It doesn't say if it's a gay bar. I mean, there's women inside. Maybe they're lesbians, but it didn't go out of its way to make you feel like, to look like a gay bar. But they get to the hotel, he passes out, wakes up, Steven's dead with bruises all over him. He has to go buy a suitcase to smuggle him out. Which is true, that is what happened, but I don't think he did it with a loud, huge radial saw. In fact, I think he stuffed his body in the suitcase and dismembered him at grandma's. But then it says in March of 88, it would have been his fourth victim, which was a guy named Richard Guerrero. It shows him strangling him after being drugged. That was actually the scene where I didn't know if it was a gay bar or not. Also, this is the only Dahmer movie where he doesn't, for even one scene, wear glasses at all. The whole movie. Now, yes, the Netflix series showed him wearing glasses nonstop, which, he needed glasses, but he famously didn't wear them during his trial because he didn't want to see the jury and the families. But this is the only movie that doesn't show him wearing glasses even once. So, and also the murder of Stephen Tuomi was November 20th, not September 15th. It does show that his most common ruse for getting men to go home with him, at this point still grandmas, is the pretense of taking nude photos and paying them, which in the film he always says $150 or $250, where in real life I think he always offered $50. It does show him taking home this aspiring model, which might have been Anthony Sears. which no, it wasn't because he got a. They show two getting away from grandma's, and I think only one got away. And that was because of grandma's help. She came down, saw this young man was too drunk, he was drugged, and wanted to see to it that he got home. So I think just one got away from grandma's, but this depicts two. It wasn't Anthony Sears. At first I thought, oh, this must be Sears or Hughes, but this guy did get away. But Sears was the first one that he actually saved body parts of, which I think in the film, that guy Richard, it shows him saving his skull, which is the scene on the cover. Which I've said before, some of these movies will separate the true crime enthusiast and just the surface level ones that just want to see killers doing fucked up things. This is one that's more for that demographic. I mean, this isn't really about the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. This is more like a slasher film, like the way the 2002 Ted Bundy movie is. I know people will say that one is their favorite because it shows him doing the most crimes. I'm sure people will say this one is their favorite because it's the bloodiest, it's the goriest. It shows him doing the most crimes, I guess. Or at least the ratio of the amount of kills and amount of scenes versus the running time. Might even have more than the Netflix series as well. Yeah, I can see people saying this is their favorite just because it's the bloodiest, the goriest, the most violent. And actually, maybe not. Maybe they will say Netflix. And the Netflix one is the essential Dahmer story. But yeah, I don't see surface level people really getting turned off by how inaccurate it is, just as long as it shows the killers doing their killing. Which, again, there's plenty of the people that wouldn't really be into true crime unless they stumbled across something that showed it. You know, kind of like those edgelords that love Rob Zombie's Halloween because it's more brutal and more graphic. That's what I'm talking about. Through text, which there's several scenes through text where it says by 1988, while he was living with grandma, he had 4 victims, which is true. He did kill and dismember four people at grandma's house, so he had 5 in total. Stephen Hicks was in Bath. It shows Lionel telling him over the phone to move out when in real life grandma asked him to move out. Lionel doesn't make an appearance, except for the scene, the flashback with him with the toy trucks. You see his arms coming down to pick him up. Shows that he moved into his apartment in '89, which is true. It does show that he lured a young boy back to his place so he could drink and take photos of him. That was the Laotian boy, whose younger brother Konarak would be a victim. It even mentions that. It does show cops coming in, seeing the boy, him getting arrested, being served a sentence of soliciting a minor for immoral purposes. So that's all accurate. It does mention it. He says he might even say not by coincidence his brother would be a victim, almost making it sound like a revenge plot, which I think it was purely coincidence in real life. It shows him attending his parole meetings, which at one point his probation officer mentions random inspections, which I never really read anything about. This movie did not have the box incident, which I was surprised, because almost everything on Dahmer has the box incident. Even the Stone Phillips interview, which is when he lived at grandma's, he had a metal lockbox that he kept the severed head of, I believe, Anthony Sears. Lionel finds it, tries to get him to open it. Dahmer keeps saying no, And then just as he's about to smash it, he tells him, there's pornography in there. I didn't want to open it in front of Grandma. Go get her ready for church. I'll open it. And so he takes the head out, takes the porn out, shows him that's what it is. It doesn't show that. It does mention, after he kills and dismembers Stephen Hicks, mentions that over voiceover that he did get pulled over, but he says if the cops had cared to look in the back seat, none of this would have happened. In real life, the cops did look in the back seat, and they saw the trash bags. They asked him what it was, and he said lawn trimmings. You're going through a rough divorce, can't sleep. I was just going to do some chores, see if they made me sleepy. So, kind of true, kind of not. Skip the box incident. It shows several neighbors complaining about the smell. I'm not sure which one is based on Pamela Bass. It shows one woman who I think is Jamaican. Then later on, there's another woman. It doesn't really say which one is his direct neighbor, but I think one of them is supposed to be Pamela Bass. It shows his first attempt at making the zombie with the drill and the hydrochloric acid, which I think it says 1990, but it really happened. The first time he tried it was in 91 with Errol Lindsay. Because at one point, after he moves into his apartment, we're done getting dates on the screen, and it just says between 90 and 91, or 89 and 91, he killed 13 men and boys, which is true. So then it's pretty much just a non-stop compilation where each scene is a new victim, and it doesn't really give us any dates or to let us know who is who. So this could have been 90, could have been 91. It felt more towards the beginning of that section of the film, so that's why I thought it was 90. But the first time he actually did do that was 91 with Errol Lindsay. And his sister is the one that freaked out on him in court. It does show him slitting one victim's throat. He usually strangled because control was his big thing. So that's why I think that victim might have been Ernest Miller, who was the first one that he saved parts for, specifically for eating, which he saved heart, liver, biceps, and parts of his thighs. It does show him having a fantasy of being caught, a guy, escaping, bringing the cops back, and it just shows him just kind of sitting there, cigarette, smiling. Which Dahmer has said sometimes that he does wish he could get caught so he could stop. It does show him feeding human meat to one of his victims, which I don't think is true, but it shows him killing him, that while he's unconscious from the drugs, he submerges him in the vat of acid while he's still alive. That never happened because, again, Dahmer he said he didn't want his victims to suffer, which is why he tried to always kill them quick and as painless as possible. Even though strangling could take quite a while and could be quite frightening, but he said he didn't want them to suffer and he didn't enjoy killing. This movie depicts him as just being a guy addicted to killing and torturing. So even loving this guy burning alive in the vat of acid, which the vat of acid is in his kitchen in this, not in the bedroom. Also, no fish tank. Just something I noticed. No fish tank in his apartment. There is this one scene that I don't understand where it shows him at the bar. It also doesn't show him getting blacklisted from bathhouses or anything like that. But he's at the club about to bring this one guy home. The bartender gets a phone call. Is anyone named Jeffrey Dahmer? So he goes to answer it. No one's speaking. And then it shows the payphone inside, and there's this priest just standing there like, as if he knows who he is and what he's doing. that's the only time that scene takes place. So I have no idea what that was about. Uh, excuse me. It does have a character based on Tony Hughes, his death victim. It does show him bringing his death victim home. It hints that they might know each other even before, which I think was true. Um, but and this scene is definitely total exploitation, and I can see this scene specifically being offensive to families of the victims, especially of Tony Hughes. Because it shows Hughes sitting there looking through a magazine, and Dahmer's in the background being like, hey, hey, clapping, and of course he's deaf, he can't hear him, saying like, I'm gonna kill you. Taking the sawzall, being like, vroom, vroom, vroom. And even like running it like right behind his head. And then taking the sawzall to the back of his neck and then laughing almost maniacally as the blood spurts him in the face. Again, he was not a maniacal slasher as far as someone that loved killing. Also, Tony Hughes was strangled. I mentioned the prank calling. This makes it seem more mean-spirited. It briefly shows the Conrack synthesophone incident where it literally just cuts to a cop car and, well, it cuts to a clip of a newspaper with the name Conrack highlighted and saying, I lured another boy. I tried the zombie tactic on him. He said he did 4 holes in his head. I think he just did 1 in real life, pouring the acid in. Then he left to go get beer. And when he came back, Conrack was outside in his underwear with neighbors around him, cops, which is true. He was able to stumble out these young women, which was Glenda Cleveland's daughter and niece, I believe. They were the ones that called the cops. And it briefly just shows Dahmer saying, like, yes, he's my lover. Hey, just let me take him inside. And then from there, they let him. They don't walk him in or anything. One of the officers is black, which it wasn't true. I don't think any black officers attended any of the calls to Dahmer's apartment building about him specifically. In fact, I think it was always the same 2 cops. Well, actually, it was the 2 cops that got fired and then later reinstated. It does show Glenda Cleveland's daughter, I think, making the inquiring call, like, hey, I was the one that called you guys. I'm just wondering, is there an update on that young boy? Which I believe it was Glenda that continued to make all the calls. And then we jump straight into Tracy Edwards, which shows him and Tracy talking. They go to the apartment. They start talking. It does portray Tracy as heterosexual, which he was. Shows him slapping the handcuff on him almost immediately. I know they hung out for a little bit. It doesn't show him forcing him to watch Exorcist 3 or laying on his chest or any of that. Puts a cuff on him, kind of taunts him, holds a knife to his throat. Tracy kicks him off of him, then runs out. That's it. What it really gets wrong is it does say July 22nd of 91. Now, in real life, well, in the film, it shows these 2 cops standing there and Tracy Edwards pulling up in his car, still fully clothed, saying, help, this guy's trying to kill me. In real life, he was almost naked. Handcuffs dangling from his wrist, kind of loopy, begging for help from these 2 cops, and either on the street or this alleyway, and then they take him up to Dahmer's, which I think in real life Dahmer just waited patiently. Here it shows Dahmer, nervously cleaning the apartment, trying to hide everything. And in this, it does show 213 as his apartment number. Here, they just cuff him immediately when they go in. They don't ask him anything. And then as they're cuffing him, that's when they look around and they find heads in the freezer. When in real life, they come in, they asked him to get the key for the cuffs for Tracy. They find, I think it was photographs in the bedroom. They did mention the smell, which was the first thing they noticed. And I believe it was photos they saw of dead bodies when they said cuff him. And then when they started looking around, that's when they found the heads in the fridge and freezer. Which I believe they were skulls, not full-on heads where you could still make out the faces. And then it just shows him get put in the cop car. And then through text, it says he was given 15 life terms of 936 years in February of 92, which is true. But then it mentions in May he got another life sentence for Stephen Hicks, which is also true, making 16 for a total of 941 years or 957 years, depending on what you read. And yeah, that's Secret Life, Jeffrey Dahmer. It's not really a biopic, and I wouldn't really call this a bullet point film, which is the term I've used before. I mean, it is a biopic. I guess technically it would be more along the lines of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, where it is maybe, I was going to say more fictional than not, but in reality, a lot of it is fairly accurate. It might just be how some of the victims were killed, or how he disposed of them, or the names, stuff you're going to get anywhere. But eventually, once you get to like the halfway point when he moves into his apartment, it really just does kind of become like a slasher compilation. Each succeeding scene is him drugging and killing someone else. So, as far as scenes like that, next to the 2002 Bundy movie, this is the one that has the most that I've seen of the killers actually committing their crimes. And this one doesn't shy away from blood and gore. It is kind of hokey looking, it's extremely low budget, but it still works. Especially this scene, the way it shows the face half melted and boiled, which I don't think he ever boiled parts in his grandmother's kitchen. I think he always did everything in the basement. So yeah, it's definitely more of like a fictionalized slasher film than it is like an educational biopic, I guess. But it's still not bad. I mean, there's enough there to get the gist of what Dahmer was all about. Just doesn't really have all the information. And a lot of really key moments, like the incident with Conrad synthesophone, very downplayed. Almost everything is downplayed, save for the actual murder and the dismemberment of his victims. Then at the very end, it says this is dedicated to his victims with the list of them, especially also the survivors, especially Tracy Edwards, who brought an end to it all. So, I mean, I get what they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to make it more fictionalized so they can tell the story without really offending anybody. But a lot of them are so close, like Tony Hughes being deaf. I can imagine that scene really triggering some people, because at that point he's flaunting what he's doing or what he wants to do. So the personality, the portrayal of Dahmer is way off. Definitely going for something different. This is not the troubled soul that we've seen in other films. At least it doesn't try to sympathize with him, which Netflix doesn't either. I don't care what people say. The Jeremy Renner film, My Friend Dahmer, does kind of try to show more sympathy towards him. This one, no. This just shows him as essentially a slasher villain, which ultimately is why I do think this might be more popular among the face value true crime fans. that will say they like true crime, but they only like movies that actually show the stuff, regardless of how accurate or fictional it is, which kind of defeats the purpose of being a true crime fan. But yeah, not a bad movie. Again, there's enough there to get the idea of what Dahmer did. I would almost say, if you don't really know much about Dahmer at all, haven't even seen the Netflix show, I would say maybe watch this first, and then read something like this, because obviously books you're going to get way more information than a movie, or sometimes maybe even more than a documentary. I would say maybe watch this first just to get an idea of what he was about, and then watch or read something like this, and certain various of documentaries. There's a ton on YouTube. Born to Kill, Most Evil, A&E, stuff like that, or ones like America's Serial Killers. Yeah, I would say watch this first, and then get real context with something like a book or a documentary. But at least I can say I've seen it and I own it, so I am glad for that. I am glad to own it. I'm glad I finally got to see it. So that makes the only Dahmer film I don't have is Raising Jeffrey Dahmer, which I have seen. I saw that probably 13 years ago. I don't remember a damn thing about it, but I remember not liking it one bit. I thought it was terrible. Maybe I'll see it again, but right now I have no interest to. It's more about his parents' reaction in the aftermath of his arrest. But yeah, this is the 1993 film Secret Life Jeffrey Dahmer, the first one made of Dahmer, the only one to be made and released during his lifetime. And that's that. So I have a ton more to get to throughout the rest of this month, so stay tuned for more serial killer films, and thank you for watching.